My name is Sarah Allen. Excuse me, I'm freezing, so I'm sure I'll warm up as I cook. So I guess the premise, I say UH, right? But this presentation I'm giving is just for general across the board. I work for UH, that's why it says UH. But it's like, here you are, you're a mad scientist, you've got these amazing ideas, you've got amazing innovations, and I'm just gonna walk into my coffee. Here you are as a mad scientist, right? You've got these incredible innovations that you want to share. I kind of have a slightly different perspective from what Dell's gonna say, because I'm more about what is it that you have got to give? What is your amazing idea that the government's gonna want, right? But it's not just about the government, because the government here recognizes that diversity is, if we've learned anything in COVID, never mind POTUS Doge, is that even in government, things can happen that are not expected. You know, there's many federal workers who are expected to retire in those jobs. And in fact, from the perspective of finding contracting officers, it was incredibly hard because they'll never leave those jobs, right? And now they've been ripped and they're available, which is amazing and a blessing for you, and I'll explain that in a bit. But really what it is diversification. Because if you rely just on one government contract or one state contract, you are going to be struggling always. The real key is diversification. So that if one project is struggling, you can use the rest of your projects to maintain that, to get it up and going again. The government's also, and this is all, I'm talking in regards mainly to civil and federal awards. That's my focus here today, okay? And basically, they want you to commercialize. If you commercialize, then not only are you doing work with the government is supporting you, but the end goal is to commercialize. And the end goal for you is not to be a business operator. The end goal for you is to be a business owner. And it's a very different mindset. And it's something that is not easy when you're beginning, when you're a single proprietor or you've got just the family working on the thing. But all the way through this experience, it's really important to understand or research or look for what does a business owner mean? Because a business owner means freedom from whatever thing that you have decided to commercialize. From an entrepreneur perspective, you love your baby, but you don't want to make it too much of your baby so that you have an exit strategy at the end of the day. All right, so a little bit of background on me. I have an accounting and auditing background as I started back in Cape Town, South Africa. And I won a green card in the lottery run by the US Immigration Department back when those things kind of existed. And I got to Seattle because I saw I saw a craft market with beautiful, huge green vegetables. I was like, oh my God, that looks so good. I didn't ask why it was so green. So I got to Seattle in October and it was freezing, and I came from sub-Saharan Africa. So it was freezing, it was raining, it was freezing, it was raining. I was like, I have to get out of here. What did I do? I joined the Air Force. That's how desperate I was. And they sent me to Hawaii. So really good decision. Thank goodness, much warmer over here. Except if you come to HTDC, Brexit. But I've had really great experiences. I've been able to be the Chief Procurement Officer for the state of Hawaii. And that's really allowed me to really understand what's happening in business on all these islands, really to understand the Hawaiian heartbeat from the folks of local people, and really appreciate where we are right now, the meeting of East meets West, kind of on a cushion of aloha. So just fantastic opportunities. I had 7 years of 2 governors in that environment. I've also worked for several federal companies as a contractor and also as in the government on the contracting side. And then last year I had my own business where I did exactly what I'm going to be talking about now, which is kind of the things you need for your back office in order to be successful here. And really, these kinds of things that if you plod along little steps and grow it, little steps, don't get overwhelmed, it's actually worthwhile for your company in general. So when you're considering back office needs, I'm going to be talking in regards to the sitter, but if you get it right, then everything else is going to be easy. As you grow, the back office can grow with you. And so understanding that you can't do it all and that sometimes the control is so hard that it's hard to delegate, right? Those are the kinds of things you as a business owner are going to be needing to work on. All right. All right, what is our strategic goals? Well, from the perspective of and you can extrapolate that across any state and government agency, really. We want to build our community. We want to meet workforce needs and drive innovation. It's especially important here because if you're clever and you leverage these opportunities, you can win not only from the feds, but at the state at the same time. And our state prerogative is we want you to stay here. We want you to hire people here. We want you to be successful here. Of course, workforce needs is super important. Also from the perspective of students, because a lot of the students, as school students, as you might know, tend to leave for the mainland. And so when we can keep, retain, or bring back folks here, that's a huge goal for us. And then driving innovation. If you have come to, and I see some familiar faces, come to Dell's previous trainings, he has invited some folks to come and talk about patents and licensing, and the way that you can partner with those folks. So you may not necessarily have some kind of innovative key that helps coalesce or complete your project, but you can reach out to these kinds of folks. All right. Not sure what was above our purpose, but basically what I want to tell you is all the keys to back office and the kinds of maybe challenges that you'll get. And I also want to just confirm everyone's getting a copy of the PowerPoint. Okay, great. Also, if you've got any questions, please go ahead and ask during this thing. It's kind of informal. I haven't got any set script or anything, so please go ahead. All right, some common vendor challenges. Well, first of all, we know it's regulatory, right? All this red tape. And so when you're working with contracting, you really need a specialist contracting officer to assist you with these hurdles. Not only because if you hire just an admin person to help you manage these issues, it is a risk. Having someone who's negotiated or, had relationships before with federal contracting officers, spoken with them, worked with them, it's really, really helpful. You have to pay a little more for a seasoned contracting officer, but I tell you, that's one of the I would say a big reason to spend money there. And it's not a lot when you consider rates, but it's totally worth it. Not necessarily for all the work. So I recommend finding a contracting officer who is seasoned and very mature, and then an admin person who can do kind of like the easy admin work, but you don't have to pay the sophisticated, expensive contracting officer for. So I found that that's usually quite a good combo. Financial concerns, managing profit margins, overhead costs, and securing bank loans, reputation management, branding, marketing, and operational requirements like insurances, indemnities, and general conditions. Other things like cyber. Cyber is huge. So while we're talking about accounting, all accounting and auditing is now very, very digital. And so cyber is a big, big issue. Feds are expecting even your subcontractors to have cyber controls. And they've now implemented this long checklist that you have to self-evaluate, begin with, on all the cyber requirements that they have. So recognize that even for an initial cost evaluation on your cyber could cost between $3,000 and $5,000. There are some local folks that started working on this, so they are around, but it is a big part of the accounting and auditing back office. I must just tell you that most people don't like audits. I'm one of the few people on the planet that loves audits, and in fact, I love auditors too. So when you go onto these super-sitters, there is a possibility that you could get audited before, during, or after. And I believe this has happened. So you really want to make sure that when you're looking at your books, you're thinking from the perspective of projects. If you're starting on a smaller accounting system, like a QuickBooks, for example, it behooves you to pay a little extra just to get to the project side of a QuickBooks accounting. Why? Because that's how you're going to want to keep your costs together for these kinds of projects. If you're ever audited, then you can just show the project and the rest will all cover your overheads. So always a good idea. Sometimes the QuickBooks folks or the accounting folks, well, you could start simple and you can build up to projects. But what I found is I started simple with some of my clients last year, and then the move to projects was so painful, especially if you have to really think about overheads. You've got to set that up front. But now here's the thing. How do you figure out what your overheads are for real? The first year you can use the de minimis, and that's what most people do. But that first year is also an opportunity to collect records, because once you've got a full year of records, that's what you base your overheads on. Okay, and so your overheads are pooled out to all your different projects. So if you've got one project, all the overheads collectively are spent on that one project. But as you get different projects, so you've got to allocate your overheads based on that pool and the volume of that project. So your overheads are kind of pooled across all your expenses. And if you have an organization that has more than one project, so you have your CIBA or your CIDA project and you've got other things, very, very important to keep your CIBA project, your costs inside of that one space. And also allocating your overheads. Because what they don't want to see is if you have So you had six projects in total. But you charge all of your overheads to the sitter, because the other ones were just like commercial efforts or, whatever you're trying to do, you're trying to earn money or whatever. That won't fly. It can only be a portion of your total that goes into it. Another thing about overheads is that, when Dell talked about unallowables, they don't go into your overheads either. And if they do, be very careful. So for example, like, big parties or alcohol or bids and proposal costs, and all of these things, be very careful how you do it with the overheads, because if there is ever, that we don't want to include unallowables in your overheads, if we can. All right, so that's all I can think of for overheads right now. Let's see what's next. All right, is there any way to move that? Oh. Yeah, I guess so. What happened? What did I do? All right. Thank you. Back office, that's what it was. It's price. All right. So contracts and procurement. Contracts and procurement, because procurement is different in every organization, and it can be different even inside of every organization. Every division, every department, every evaluator, every acquisition, every procurement is very different from itself. And we need attention to detail here. But mostly we need someone who understands procurement and someone who can talk to that contracting officer. It is not the same as talking to your technical scientists, your government technical scientists, or peers. Your contracting officer is also not necessarily a business person overall. They are about compliance. They are about protecting the federal government. And so also understand that inside of the government, totally different animal. They're not for profit, right? They don't have a boss going, bottom line, cross. They can spend all day, and it's doesn't matter, right? And so there's two different animals are meeting, a for-profit, which is your company, and then this government agency. And so it's really helping facilitate that meetup where you're looking with totally different goals in mind. And so from that perspective, I go back to saying, understand your contracts and procurement. Yes, as an owner, you need to understand that fully. But having someone to help you do that who has the same sense of mindset as a contracting officer really, really helps. Accounting cycle, align with UH fiscal year and financial requirements. Okay, well, to extrapolate that, find out where your fiscal years are for your organizations. Most of the federal ones are starting in October. I know our state starts in July. Think about how you're going to manage your calendar year or your fiscal year compared to those. Because sometimes you might have to do two budgets, you might have to do two forecasts. If you've got a calendar year from January to December, and you've got to manage their fiscal years. Because they want to see you quoting in their fiscal years a lot of times. Now, the sitters are only a certain period of months. So sometimes those months might fall over their fiscal year. It depends, it shouldn't make a difference, but always double check. IT compliance, like I talked about, cyber, really important. Business development, market your brand and build relationships. Okay, so the marketing piece is important. It may not seem important up front because the sitter is just kind of like research. But you want to think about branding, and they are going to ask you these questions in phase 2 also. It's like, what's your marketing plan? And what's your branding plan? Part of branding is what you say to the contracting officer and what you say to the technical evaluator is beautiful, pristine formats, things that are easy to read, not stuff that's not too much flowery, but that is quantitative narrative. Giving them competence, flyers or brochures, very pristine diagrams. The more professional that can come across, it's amazing and makes such a difference when an evaluator is reading that information. Same with report formatting. They're going to have a very specific way that they want you to write those reports. And it's not rocket science, right? But it's boring, it's painful, it's formatting. You're going to need a business development team to help you through that. One other thing I want to say is because I've had clients and we went into the civil stuff, it was really two civil contracts. Right up front, they ask you to fill in, it's like an online cost data tab. And you put in all the different, you put in the labor, you put in your materials, you put in lots of equipment, your contractors, your subcontractors, right? The way you think the overheads and the indirects are calculated are not the way the overheads and the indirects are calculated. So I implore you, this is so important, way before things are due. You must go in and understand what's going on with the maths of the calculation inside of the formula being given. Because the calculation of 51%, right, you know, you're going to have the most percentage, is not as clear as you would think it is. It's worked out based on not only your labor and your direct costs, but it also considers some of those overheads that are attached to those direct costs, notwithstanding the subcontractors and the consultants. So while I thought I knew what I was doing, right, with the numbers, when you put it in, it calculates slightly different. So I'm just saying that it's good for you to like look, even though it takes 5 minutes to plug these in, it's good for you to like figure this out way before it's due, because what happened with us is we were doing it like last minute, you know, we were all working the night before, trying to get all this information. We had to work with several different parties because if you've got a subcontractor, you need all the information. They've got to give you for their stuff as well. So that's again, labor, fringe, rates, hours, even though it's a firm fixed price and not a cost price that typically, they are still going to want all that cost information because they know that you're an innovator, you are a mad scientist, that the back office may not be your, you know, best thing that you are good at. So they really try and kind of spoon feed you to the point where it's like that and that's how it is, right? Because they are trying to reach a whole bunch of folks who are on accountants and auditors. But have someone there, make sure you're looking at these numbers, see how they change so you can understand how they determine 51%. Yeah. And what happened was, because every civil is kind of the same, very slightly different, make sure you read everything. This is another reason I want to contact an officer or a business development person who can read these things with you, because it's so easy to miss something. So it's the buddy effect, right? This is why you need a bit of a team. You know, you can't do it all on your own because you could easily miss something. So it was a civil event, and we were filling out the cost forms. We had our Excel spreadsheets, we had all our different tabs, we had things like ODCs, other direct costs, which we can travel into that section, so I can add that. We had all of that, so we had our numbers, all we had to do was plug them in, right? It was over a period of 2 years. And they said, okay, well, you've only got up to 240,000. But because, and so we figured that out on our Excel spreadsheet, but when we put it in, it was over, press, submit, we didn't realize it, it wasn't so obvious, and then we didn't get in because we had overspent on our budget. So this form thing, or this online cyber form thing, and I'm sure Dale's probably got the right name for it. But just be very careful of that and be very cognizant of that, because all the goodness that you just spent planning and getting ready for this amazing event that you're about, hopefully you're gonna get, could be for naught if you aren't aware of what's happening with that online thing. Abel, do you have a name for it? Is there a name for it?
Well, I mean, you have a bunch of them.
Okay,
If you're talking defense, it's DSIP. And
Yes,
there's the
okay.
cost volume in there, which sounds like what you're talking about.
yes, that's
Particularly in how it
exactly.
does the calculations, but if they're doing something like grants.gov, it's very streamlined actually with the calculations. It doesn't, because in DSIP, you can actually select subcategories that overhead and G&A can be applied to versus can't be applied to. That is difficult to do in Excel. Whereas like grants.gov is just a dump, and it goes, okay, just apply your indirect, what's your base? So there's a lot more nuance that you could do that you don't have to plug away with selecting different cells and not selecting different cells. So you
Oh, well,
have to do
that's
DSIP.
So hopefully none of you are looking at DoD then.
Yeah.
That's my experience. Thank you, Dale. Appreciate that. All right, so from the state and federal perspective, this is the kind of thing that your contracting officer and your admin person will be able to help with. Or you can, if you have the extra time. And obviously at the beginning, this is something you are gonna have to do, even just at a high level understanding. Never allow folks to just go ahead and do the thing like, they're thinking, oh my God, this person really knows what they're talking about, I'm so relieved, I can just hand it to them, close my eyes and walk away. As a business owner, you can never do that. Right? Because that's the first step to forward, to forward, internal forward, and that goes on all the time. Or Sting, if anyone knows about Sting, the singer, his accountants stole £9 million from him. So it can even happen to somebody like that. Yeah, so how do you understand the process but not have to do it? Well, at the beginning, you're gonna have to do it because you have to go in and create some of the accounts before your contracting officer can even access them. So it is going to be, some of that government burden, but it's good. And while you're going through that pain, just be like, thank you for the pain so that I understand what my, employees are gonna have to deal with in the future. So from the federal requirements, SAM is your base. There are companies, organizations that are out there that have been given grants to assist you with these things. So, but I would say is once you've got a basic registration for anything, try and get a delegation inside of it where you can hand it to your contracting officer to manage, because sometimes you're going to change an address, or you're going to add a person who has to be a POC, or you're going to need to check a box on all the FAR clauses that they need to check, right? And then something's changed. It's like you want to have to go in every single time and change it. Having somebody able to access it is so much better. SBA certifications. Well, I'm not sure what's going on with some of these things, but some of them are easy and some of them are incredibly difficult. So if you're a veteran, it's super easy because you can just throw the V240 form up there and you're done. I tried to register as a woman-owned business. That was crazy. I spent about 3.5 hours and this long thing. And then it was like, well, we'll get back to you in like 9 months to determine if I'm woman-owned business. And it was just crazy the amount of questions that are asked. So you may want to investigate, you know, what is worthwhile, just to have another small business certifications. Is it worthwhile to what you're trying to achieve? Because you might be able to have 3 different certifications, 2 out of 3 are easier than the third. Maybe that's good enough, at least to get you started. Because it takes so long to get these certifications. When you're doing your sort of setup, it could ask you, I know that it could ask what kind of certificate when you're registering in SAM, it's gonna ask you what kind of certs do you have. Don't say you have a certification if you don't have one, because the contracting officers check these things. So, but just note, some stuff has to be done way before you're prepared to submit your civil submission. And that registrations and certifications are the things that you've got to get started on like yesterday. So that can take a while. WAWF is a system, and you'll probably see others, but that's the one I've used for the Air Force, and that's how you get paid. So another reason I have a contracting officer registered and underneath you, I was the person who would go in here. I would submit my client's invoice. I would make sure the report was done. There would be communication with the tech eval guy, and the pay systems. You know, each one of these systems is a learning curve. It's a whole thing that you have to learn, you have to understand. There was very specific codes that I had to put in. Then it didn't work because the tech eval guy put it in originally wrong. So then we had to spend like 3 weeks trying to figure out how we were gonna like invoice these folks with the way that it was set up. So we eventually sent these invoices in wrong, but they were approved because it was a system error. So these things happen all the time with red tape and systems, and they all kind of siloed, not all of them talk to each other, and then some of them do, but they give the wrong information. So there's like so much forth and back with all this kind of red tape stuff that will just drive you crazy. If you're trying to like make a thing and be innovative and do your stuff, have someone else do this if you can. Set Ops is what Feds use to show you what solicitations are out there. It's kind of like grants.gov. A great place to see what all business is going on and what's available. And also, they do also post awards. So it's also a great information for business intelligence. On the local side, Supercodes, for example, is just a small purchase system. And the nice thing about those kinds of systems is that once you register and you say what you're interested in, the thing just sends you emails and say, oh, well, you were interested in farming, so here's a nice farming solicitation for you. You know, it makes it so much easier. So, but there's also high eco. On the state procurement office, the high eco system, most of the executives use that to solicit. What happens though is if you're looking for opportunities, you as a business operator could be looking at opportunities all day long. All day long, every day you've got to look and see what's there, what's being awarded, what's going on. It's important business intelligence. Again, something that maybe an admin person or contracting officer can help with. Then on the local side, now, why is this important, first of all? Because you're doing a fake also, but because you can get matching money from the state. The state wants to participate, wants to give you money, and support, so why not take it? And so, but importance, you've got to be HCE compliant because they ain't gonna give you any money without HCE compliance. HCE compliance means that we aren't gonna give you any kind of cash or do business with you unless we know that you're paying your taxes. You're a good citizen, you're doing, everything right. So HCE covers 4 main areas: IRS, road tax, which is our local tax, DCCA, which is permitting and licensing, and DLIR, which is labor. Okay, most of those are easy. It's IRS that's usually the hardest one to get through. But you need to be working this and the SAM certs and the SBA certs like yesterday, because it can take some time for this to happen, to get that right. So definitely recommend getting your HCE. GET is something that I'm sure you are all aware of, that you need to include generally in your quotes, certainly for the from the UH perspective. From the feds, not so much. Definitely confirm that. Do we put in, or can you, do we put in GT on the fed side?
No. For most federal agencies, you actually don't pay
You don't pay that.
tax on any sort of award. It's the state levels that you do, and the state levels are very hit or miss on whether they require you to pay taxes on a federal award or not.
Exactly. So there you go. And then the rest is pretty easy. Labor, it just wants to make sure, and this is very important to understand, because UIR can kind of really get you that. So can the state's labor, the federal labor and the department, is be very aware as to whether someone is an employee or a consultant or subcontractor. As soon as you start telling them what to do every minute of the day and scheduling them and putting them in meetings, and they start to look and feel like an employee. If they start to look and feel like an employee, the labor folks can say, "Oh, we consider that person an employee. Guess what? Now you have to pay payroll." So, and rent and all of those things that we weren't paying before, the consultant was worrying about themselves. And so I find at the beginning, it's really easy to separate that out, right? Because you can just be my consultant admin person. I'll pay you, I don't know, $30 an hour for a little bit of work. And then I'll give you a 1099 at the end of the day. But if it starts becoming more of an employment position, that's when you need to be ready to switch over. And now I want to talk about payroll. So I recommend, and these are all personal opinions that I'm sharing with you, but I recommend that payroll is the most painful. There's just so many things to it that if you can get a payroll company to take that on, I would highly recommend it. Just so burdening with the red tape. And I want you to be creating your thing and working on your thing. And working on relationships, right? Those are the soft skills that a business operator and owner needs. The payroll, it's so complicated, and the taxes can change every month, and there's ups and downs. Just get someone to do it for you. Now, we had work, which was overseas, as well as here. It was happening in Taiwan. There was all this kind of overseas work as well. That's where it becomes a little bit more difficult to find someone to be payroll. And in fact, pretty much it's ADP, from what I understand, is the big one who can manage that global stuff. But the rules start to slightly change when you're working with overseas labor. I'm gonna dwell on that. I assume, hopefully, that they're not there yet. So, but payroll, definitely worthwhile, definitely worthwhile.
Sarah, can I ask you a question
Yes.
about IT security?
Yes.
Is there a list of IT certifications that are standard, their expiration dates for that, or once you take some kind of certification requirement, fulfill that, is it perennial or annual?
Yeah. So, it's a whole thing. There's like whole, websites. I think the Navy Defense Innovation Unit. You want to write that down. The Navy really gets into this and gives you great explanation. They've got like a main site that deals with the cyber issue. Here's what I can tell you what I know, right? Is that we had to, the contracting officer was getting all the documents ready to start the first civil with my client. And they were like, you've got to do this evaluation. It's a self-evaluation. That's kind of how it starts. And it's this long Excel spreadsheet and say, how do you, like, it goes into every single thing, like, how do you share information? How is your system set up? Is it standalone? Is it protected? I mean, it's deep. And so you self-evaluating, start with a number. And there is, I think they're trying to get to 110. I don't know. There's some kind of number that, like, once you're a huge organization, will be able to achieve all of that, right? But that is the big thing. And then, and that initial evaluation, if you're not a cyber person, can cost $5,000. So, overall, huh?
You're looking at 100 grand to be CMMC compliant right now.
Wow.
It's insane. It's killing small business doing any new technology.
Well, and there's two different levels too. You have the level two, which is the self-certification that you at least have to have if you take any money, but if you can't handle any sort of CACU, classified, unclassified data, then you have to be the level 3, which is the costs a lot of money. I was just at a conference earlier this year and CMMC is a huge thing, but there is an effort that one of the service components, and I cannot remember who it is actually out of, is trying to put forward to do a low cost or free level 3 evaluation for companies, but that is very burgeoning.
That's just a picture they give that to.
And it is we'll see what happens when it happens.
Yeah, and so the big companies, even though they trying to grandfather this in and the feds are like, this stuff's gonna get there, but the bigger companies, if you get a chance to subcontract a radio or KBR or they are now requiring their subcontractors to be cyber relevant because they can get bid if you want, because you are the deepest link, right? So cyber's kind of taking over everything, and if you look at CPAs now, the CPA exam is more and more based on digital auditing, digital accounting, and how that works. And so, knowing that we have massive threats, cyber threats, especially from folks like China, it's, become obviously really important.
So you mentioned China. So if you have a product and does your product have to reflect that it's all US made components, or are they asking questions like that of that nature in order for you to do a submittal? Or can you be denied because your product is all foreign made in China?
It could be, it depends. So it depends on, like, for example, who you're applying to. If it's the DoD and you're doing like top secret AI project, kind of that's what you're doing. Like you're not trying to buy from, the access, the several countries that are named in the FAR, Federal Acquisition Regulations. However, it depends, because even the DoD buys stuff from China, whether they like to admit it or not. So it does depend. It depends on how the solicitation is written as well. The thing about contracts, especially solicitations, especially the federal ones, they throw hundreds of terms and conditions into that thing. And some of them, like you wonder, why is it even there? There's always, for some reason, there's always a shipping terms and conditions in there. I'm like, what? We're not even shipping anything, but, so it's really important to use that contracting officer to go through those terms and conditions, because in there, they could talk about the Buy American Act. That's kind of like the federal side, but on the state side, they could say something like that too. Certainly, I know that because you wait, right? POTUS Doge has taken a lot of the grants away from universities recently that have been kind of aligned. And so, kind of the same thing, right? It's planning and strategizing over that just to make sure that you don't fall through the cracks. Did I answer that? All right. All right, so let's see. Are we running out of time?
10 minutes,
Okay,
but I mean, the last two slides. We can cover those. But I mean, you can walk through this too.
say that again.
10 more minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
so a lot of times we want to please these folks, right? We want to take people to go, oh my God, company, whatever your company's name is the best. We're going to use them over and over and over again. Aren't they wonderful? And you're going to be like, you know what? I love you guys so much, and I can do so much for you that I can do this. And I can do this, and you know what? That's a real gap in your program. I can fix that. And all your passion and excitement and your mad science and stuff is gonna come out. And they'll be like, absolutely, I'm gonna get like kudos for this from my boss when I tell them the contractor did that. But don't do it without a PO, a purchase order. Don't do it without a contract. Or if you're gonna do it without a purchase order or contract, recognize that you're doing something that's valuable that you're maybe not gonna get paid for. You could get paid for it because they could pay you after the fact if you've got real good negotiation skills. But it's not promised to you that you're gonna get paid. So you want to leverage that strategically. You know, if you feel like, hey, if I do this extra thing for this person, I may not be paid for it, but it's gonna pan out positively over the long run. Like if you have a vision like that, sure. But if you keep delivering without an approved or signed contract or PO, you're only gonna hurt your own business. And you will also possibly lose respect, which is even worse, because that comes back to the branding, goodwill of the company. People want to know that you're for profit. Inside of the federal acquisition regulations, it says that we need to allow businesses to have profit. It is not the purpose of government to put businesses into bankruptcy. It says that. So sometimes you can remind people it says that, you know? But that profit is for you to enhance your business and to also keep it as a cushion for not only the things that Del said, but other things. And this goes into kind of the overheads as well. When you're thinking about salary increases, okay, because your employees are going to want salary increases, bonuses, travel relocation, all these other weird little costs and things that you didn't really necessarily budget. That's where the cushion goes. Okay, and then I want to talk about your financial statements. If you don't know how to read or analyze your financial statements, that can really hurt you. Financial statements analysis, not even half the government knows how to do this. So oftentimes, they'll ask you for 3 years of audited financial statements as part of your solicitation, your proposal, right? So that they can evaluate. I've been on cost teams. No one in the entire cost team, except for me, only because I'm an auditor and accountant, knows how to look at these financial statements. Here's what they should do. certain financial ratios, liquidity, for example, that you can easily look at any financial statement, look at those formulas and work them out, very simple. But then what do you do with that number? You've got to benchmark it against the same industry. If you don't benchmark it, compare it against anything, it's meaningless. So if you do like a liquidity formula ratio, for example, you're trying to find out how liquid is this company, right? How much cash flow can you get if you need it, right? Banks are often want to see that. And you say you get a 0.09, right? What does that mean? It means nothing unless you compare it to the same industry, the same kind of company. If you're a service company and you're comparing your ratios to General Motors, it's never going to make sense. General Motors has a whole inventory of cars. They don't have services, they have things. You're a service, right? And so understanding how to read your financials, really important. Now, here's the key to a sole proprietor or small business building their wealth. Is first of all, it's not a bank account in your trip to Spain and your fabulous life. Not yet. Okay, so if you've got personal expenses that you're putting into your business account, get them out of there. Get them out of there. It's so easy. It's so easy to do it, especially if you've got like this one accounting system with no projects and you've got all these like personal expenses. A lot of those can be deducted. So find out what you can deduct, because those certainly are deductible. But get rid of all the other things, the vacations, the dinners, the parties, all of that. Get that out of there, because what you're trying to do is when you have profit left over, you want to reinvest into the company. You want to bring it back into the company. And the most important financial statement that you can look at right now is your cash flow statement. Cash flow statements are often ignored, certainly from an evaluation perspective. Why? Because no one knows how to evaluate them. Okay? But the real important thing is something called free cash flow. Free cash flow is super important. Because what that means is, after you've done your investments in your business, you've taken out your personal expenses, and you've got extra money, you can start using that for capital investment, larger projects. That's what free cash flow is. And that's something that you want to keep top of your mind when you find your accountant. Always keep finding out more about how you can do free cash flow, because no matter what happens in the industry and the market, if you've got a really good process for that, it will really help cushion you from whatever shocks happen in the industry. And right now, as a small business, a growing business, cash flow is more so than anything else.
Yes. I think that's it. Okay. Separation of duties. This comes back to fraud.
There are very specific segregation of duties per audits. So I would always recommend you get the contracting officer to read the audit requirements. There's different audit requirements, and the way government audits is slightly different. So there's audit organizations. Each of them have specific chapters and explanations on how they audit. And there's something like 21 categories in the equipment section. I've done equipment audits. That wasn't kidding when he says equipment is a thing. It's definitely a thing. And I did those kinds of equipment audits for all the telescopes up at Haleakala and all the little pieces and stuff. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yes, GAGAS is the government auditing standards. DCCA and DCMA are the ones who do your audits. And you always want someone, not you, because you are too liable as the owner operator. You want a contracting officer to be speaking to these folks. Okay. And separation of duties. Please figure this out, because this is, it's fraud waiting to happen. Don't let the same person write the checks and have access to your bank. Don't, there's obvious lines of separation that are really important for you. All right, audits, keep your stuff. If you do it right from the get-go, it makes it so much easier. Keep all your receipts. Keep them all, and if you can use tech, use tech. If you've got a mobile app where you can just upload your receipt right then and there, do it. Absolutely, it saves time, and then you don't have to keep trying to find stuff. And then ethical conduct, of course. We all try and show ethics and integrity. When I first got to the state procurement office and I was the CPO of the state, all these people kept inviting me to these dinners, and they kept offering me these amazing bottles of wine. And I was like, everyone's so friendly here in Hawaii. And I didn't get it. It took me a couple of weeks to go, why all these people keep taking me out today? And then I realized it was happening. And it can happen without you even knowing. Oh, these people are being friendly, it's aloha, and it's like, next thing you know, it's like, oh my gosh, we've had some crazy ethics situations here in the state where a whole bunch of architects and engineers, like a group of them, got together and started being really friendly with government evaluation folks and inviting them to golf events and having them win prizes. And next thing you know, those guys are the ones who won the contracts. Crazy stuff. So while it may not completely stop you from doing work, it can blacklist you for a little bit, and the federal government can demand and spend. So you don't want that either. But you can go back to work after that, even after being debarred and suspended, about 3 to 5 years later. I've seen it. We want you to succeed. The most important thing is mindset. Everything else is easy, but it's mindset that's the most important here. Is that just when you think it may not happen, you could turn around the corner and there it is. It's consistency, it's discipline, it's stepping up every day and believing in your goal and your outcome, and knowing that this is so much bigger than just one government $180,000 for a research study. This is bigger for you as an owner, and it's going to give you financial freedom at the end of the day. So thank you very much, and I'm very questions.